Hearing of the Minnesota Senate Committee on Agriculture, Veterans, Broadband, and Rural Development is now in session for Monday, April 21st, 2025. Folks got a lot of stuff to do today. A couple of sort of introductory level-setting comments. First and most important thing is Keely's dad is here. Everybody say hi to Keely's dad. Got a wave? Everyone wave at Keely's dad. But yeah, let's give him some applause too. That's nice of you. Are you adequately embarrassed? Oh. Folks, today, as you know, a lot of our work at this point of session has progressed. And so today what we're doing is an informational hearing on some issues that we think are important and interesting and opportunities for public education, but we are not taking action on any of the bills we will hear today. These bills will not be moving forward. This is an opportunity to understand and respect and appreciate the issues that they address, but we will not be moving these bills this session. That being said, the things we have to talk about today, we're going to learn about ortho-phthalates today. Then also our friends in Hoffman's going to talk to us about Minnesota Black Farmers Association requests, Women's Environmental Institute and Farm Incubator project, then a solar pollinator program special license plate establishment, and last about some concerns and thoughts about treated seeds. So that's the plan for the day, everybody. Senator Gustafson, you want to just get started, please? And I will also add that these issues and our interest in education about these issues or about these issues is very, very high. So we do have a lot of people who want to talk, which means we have to be efficient, please. So let's please be very careful with the amount of time that we spend and strategic about complementing each other in terms of what we're talking about. So Senator Gustafson, if you would please, get us started.
Thank you, Chair Putnam and members of the committee, and thank you for your time today to discuss SF 188. It's the test and report of phthalates in packaged food bill. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this issue about phthalates in our packaged food and how Minnesota can take action to address this important health concern. As some of you know, and maybe some of you don't, phthalates are industrial chemicals found in many plastics. These chemicals have been known to leach into plastic packaged foods and cause harm to people once ingested. Research has linked eating phthalates to hormone problems, developmental issues, and potential long-term health risks. Despite these risks, people here in Minnesota don't currently have a way to know if these chemicals are in the food that they're buying in their families. This lack of information leaves consumers at risk, and that's the problem this bill aims to fix. SF 188 offers a simple but effective solution. It would require food companies in Minnesota to make our own brands of packaged food to test those products for ortho-phthalate levels every 2 years. And importantly, they would need to make those test results easily available to the public. This openness will give consumers the knowledge they need to make informed decisions about the food that they bring home. This bill isn't just about pointing out potentially harmful chemicals in our food, it's about actively protecting the health of everyone in Minnesota. By giving consumers real and accessible information, SF 188 empowers them to make informed decisions that reflect their health concerns and values.
Thank you very much, Senator Gustafson. Our first two testifiers are both remote. Mr. Hansen, are you available? If you could, please unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, and commence your state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready, please.
Yes, dear Chair Putnam and committee members, my name is Michael Hansen. I'm a senior scientist at Consumer Reports. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on Senate File 188, which would require food manufacturers and brand owners to test packaged foods for levels of ortho-phthalates and publicly report those results on their website. We strongly support Senate File 188. Founded in 1936, Consumer Reports is an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works with consumers to create a fair and just marketplace. Known for its rigorous testing and rating of products, CR advocates for laws and company practices that put consumers first. CR is dedicated to amplifying the voice of consumers to promote safety, digital rights, financial fairness, and sustainability. The organization surveys millions of Americans every year, reports extensively on the challenges and opportunities for today's consumers, and provides ad-free content and tools to 6 million members across the U.S. We have more than 47,000 members in Minnesota. Ortho-phthalates are chemicals that are plasticizers, substances added to plastic to make it more flexible and durable. But these chemicals don't just stay in the plastic. They can leach out and get into our food and drinks. Ortho-phthalates can enter not only through packaging, but also throughout the entire food chain via exposure from plastic and tubing, conveyor belts and vinyl gloves, or from meat and produce via contaminated soil and water. National biomonitoring data show that the primary source of ortho-phthalates for most people in the U.S., including infants and children, is food consumption. Growing research has shown that ortho-phthalates are endocrine disruptors, that is, chemicals that interfere with production of various hormones, including testosterone and estradiol. Even very small changes in hormone levels can lead to increased risks of diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, certain cancers, birth defects, premature birth, neurodevelopmental disorders, and infertility. There are epidemiological studies showing elevated phthalate levels in pregnant women are linked to adverse health effects in their offspring, including problems with fetal development and potential disruption to cognitive function and behavior. Given the increased concerns over the health effects of ortho-phthalates and the fact that the Consumer Product Safety Commission banned 8 ortho-phthalates for use in children's toys and child care products due to health concerns, and that was in 2017, Consumer Reports conducted a study of phthalate levels in packaged foods, which was published in January 2024. We tested samples of 85 different foods for 10 different ortho-phthalates. We included prepared meals, fruits and vegetables, milk and other dairy products, baby food, fast food, meat and seafood, all packaged in cans, pouches, foil, or other material. We found ortho-phthalates in 84 of the 85 items we tested, with many products having levels above which research has linked to health problems. Given the potential health problems associated with consumption of ortho-phthalates and our own findings of ortho-phthalates in 84 of 85 foods tested, we strongly support SF 188, which would require the companies to test packaged foods for ortho-phthalates and post those results to their website so they are available to consumers. By posting the levels of ortho-phthalates in their food products, consumers can use this information to make informed choices about the packaged foods they consume. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony today. Consumer Reports urges the committee to give serious consideration to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hansen. Ms. Olson, you are also online. If you could please unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Putnam and members of the committee. My name is Hannah Resendez Olson, and I am a lifelong resident of Minnesota. I am a Climate and Health Equity Leaders Fellow with Health Professionals for a Healthy Climate, a Community Health Specialist for a local public health department, and a proud alum of St. Catherine University's Master of Public Health program. Minnesota has a history of leading the way in consumer protection. In 2009, we became the first state to ban certain products containing the harmful chemical BPA, along with passing the Toxic Free Kids Act. These actions were driven by concerns that federal regulators were moving too slowly to protect public health. Today, we face a similar challenge with a related type of chemicals, phthalates. Phthalates are widely used chemicals that interfere with the body's natural hormone functions. As plasticizers, substances added to plastics to increase flexibility and softness, phthalates are found in a staggering range of products, from shower curtains and nail polish to IV tubes and food packaging. These endocrine-disrupting chemicals are linked to serious health conditions, including cancer, heart disease, diabetes, reproductive disorders, and compromised immune function. Due to their harms, Minnesota has already banned certain phthalates in children's products, like pacifiers and sippy cups, designating them as priority chemicals. Yet, recent findings from Consumer Reports reveal that phthalates persist in many common foods, from my favorite Chipotle burrito to pints of Ben & Jerry's. This means we're not just exposed to these chemicals through cosmetics or household items, we're consuming them directly in our meals. As a public health professional specializing in community health promotion, I strongly supported HF 44 and SF 188, recent files in the Minnesota Legislature that would have required food producers to test for and disclose the presence of phthalates in packaged food. While SF 188 didn't move forward this session, the importance remains. Transparency is essential. Providing phthalate levels on producer websites would allow consumers like you and me to make informed choices about our food, while also encouraging manufacturers to identify and reduce phthalates in their production processes, further protecting public health. Minnesotans deserve to know what is in their food. There is no safe level of plasticizers in our diet, yet we are unknowingly and frequently exposed to them. The widespread use of plastics not only threatens public health, but also exacerbates climate change. 98% of chemicals used in plastic production come from fossil fuels, contributing to nearly 4% of global greenhouse gas emissions. To be clear, SF 188 would not have imposed penalties on food manufacturers, nor did it aim to harm local businesses. I personally love many of the products tested. General Mills makes Cheerios right here in Minnesota. I also recognize that phthalate exposure is nearly unavoidable in today's world. Rather than ignoring the problem, we have a responsibility to take action. While food manufacturers cannot overhaul their processes overnight, change starts with awareness. By requiring transparency, we create an opportunity for businesses to evaluate their materials and consider safer alternatives. A bill like SF 188 is a step towards a future where consumers are informed and protected. Human health is deeply connected to the health of our planet, including the food we eat and how it is produced. If we want to safeguard Minnesotans' well-being, we must demand accountability from food producers, and I urge you all to support this action in the next legislative session. Phthalate testing offers a critical opportunity to protect public health, rebuild consumer trust, and promote a safer future for all who call Minnesota home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. I do have one quick question for you if you're still there. Members, remember, this is an informational day, so we should have lots of curiosities, and we should actually do some learning today. But the question, Ms. Olson, I have for you is, do you say we banned phthalates in sippy cups? Do you know when we did that, and what the sippy cup industry is doing instead?
I do not have the specific year that was passed, but I do know that the Toxic Free Kids Act and the BPA ban was back in 2009, but I could follow up on that for you.
No, that's great. Thank you, Ms. Olson. I appreciate it. Ms. Stark, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Chair Putnam and members of the committee, I am Ivana Stark, State Director of Clean Water Action, Minnesota. We exist to ensure that water is fishable, drinkable, and swimmable for generations to come. And I'm here on behalf of our tens of thousands of members who care about this issue in Senate File 188. We are grateful to Senator Gustafson for carrying this bill. None of us would ever knowingly give our children plastic to eat. We would never hand them a roll of plastic wrap or a handful of plastic chunks to nibble on when their little tummies rumble. Or do we? As you've heard, some of our kiddos' favorite snacks that some of even us, we grew up on, like Cheerios, are full of phthalates. By testing products and reporting the findings online, consumers are able to understand what they're buying and what they're eating and feeding their families. Minnesotans deserve to know what is lurking in the products that they buy. Manufacturers should also be aware of what they are producing and selling. The idea behind this bill is not only to protect Minnesota families from the toxic repercussions of exposures to phthalates, but to also protect the confidence in our food supply. Our food supply, human health, and water quality is being hit from every angle. PFAS, nitrates, phthalates, microplastics, the list goes on and on. We must demand better from our food manufacturers and take steps such as supporting a bill like this to protect the food we eat. And Mr. Chair, if I could take a moment and acknowledge the loss of Jeff Broberg, a tireless advocate with the Minnesota Well Owners Association. He lost his battle with cancer very recently. I think it was just last week. And I wanted to take a moment and recognize that we are bombarded every day by pollution in the air, the water, and the soil, and that chips away at our health bit by bit. So I'm thankful that you took the time to learn about the phthalates and how they contribute to the toxic load we all carry. We are open to working together to make this bill addressing the problem a bit stronger and more implementable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Stark, and thank you also for taking the moment to acknowledge Mr. Broberg. We didn't know he'd passed away. I didn't even know he was ill.
Yeah, he announced, Mr. Chair, he announced that he had prostate cancer. I believe it was at an MAP meeting 2 Mondays ago. We saw him on Thursday, and I believe he passed early. The break has thrown me off early last week.
Thank you, Ms. Stark. Our next testifier is Ms. Ollinger. If you could, please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Chair Putnam and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I want to thank Senator Gustafson also for authoring this bill. My name is Lori Olinger, and I'm with the Coalition for Plastic Reduction. This bill is an important first step to create more transparency with our food systems. A study done by Consumer Reports revealed phthalates, a chemical used to make plastic more flexible and durable, is in our foods. We've been using plastic for more than 60 years to protect food and keep it fresh, but we now know that plastic leaches chemicals into our food. And phthalates are a particular concern because, as you've heard, they're endocrine disrupting chemicals that can impact our hormone systems and really are most at risk for developing fetuses and young children. In 2016, the FDA received a petition, a citizen petition, to ban phthalates in food contact materials. They acknowledge that the authorization of phthalate uses is based on data from prior to 1985 and that the uses have changed since then. The FDA is now seeking additional information on phthalates, including dietary exposure. So this bill could actually provide valuable information for the FDA to use in their review. The top 3 chemicals that they're currently reviewing are BPA, PFAS, and phthalates. And the Minnesota Department of Health has listed 17 phthalates on its chemicals of high concern list. So there is concern at the state and national level. There are some restrictions on a few children's products like toys, but there are no safe levels or restrictions to protect our food. Food manufacturers do frequent testing to make sure their products meet nutrition promises and safety requirements. This bill only requires them to add 1 additional test every 2 years. The process should be straightforward. The company could actually even purchase their product at the grocery store, ship it to a lab, request a phthalate test, get results back in about 2 weeks, and post the results on their website. Most of the labs we contacted said phthalate testing is something that they do, and none were concerned about the capacity to handle the increased number of tests. Eurofins is an international lab that said they do about 10,000 food tests every day. And the companies, one of the companies mentioned that the companies who do phthalate testing now are companies that sell their products in Canada and Europe. Consumers are increasingly becoming aware of chemicals like phthalates that pose a risk to their health, and they have a right to know what's in their food. This bill gives them the ability to make safer food choices for themselves and their families. And it should not be confusing for consumers to see these numbers, because they don't have to know, like, what's a safe level. It's just they can see what are the levels in their food. If they want to compare 2 different types of cereal, they can say this one is higher, this one's lower, and make a safer choice. Food manufacturers should also want to know what chemicals are getting into their products, whether it's from packaging, processing equipment, or even food inputs. And hopefully this will incentivize them to take steps to eliminate phthalates wherever they're being introduced.
Thank you, Ms. Ollinger. Our next testifier is Dr. Baumler. Please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready, please.
Chair Putnam and committee members, my name is Megan Baumler. I'm a professor of nutrition at St. Catherine University. Food unifies all of us in the community in that we all need to eat to stay alive. And the development of systems so that people have the food they need is constantly evolving. The use of plastics has in part allowed for the production of household and individual-sized servings of food that meet our needs and fit our lifestyles. However, the phthalates that are a component of plastics are now known to pose health threats. Over the last several decades, there have been 2 major changes in the way that people eat that have increased exposure to phthalates. The amount of processed foods that are consumed has increased, and the amount of money spent on food away from home has increased. A study done by the USDA Economic Research Service found that in 2023, almost 60% of total food spending was on food away from home. And a new analysis led by researchers at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health found that more than half of calories consumed at home by adults in the US come from packaged, ultra-processed foods. These 2 major changes have led to the increased exposure to phthalates for families, making this topic highly relevant. The increased exposure to phthalates does not affect all families equally. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that adults who were food insecure were more likely to rely on ultra-processed foods. And these ultra-processed foods are more likely to contain the phthalates. The data from the Consumer Reports indicates that it isn't just packaged foods, though, that contain the phthalates. As we've heard already today, phthalates appear in meats because they sit on conveyor belts, and there's phthalates in the conveyor belts. The phthalates are also in vegetables leached in from the soil. Phthalates are in foods that are certified organic. Thus, phthalate exposure is a concern for even those who don't rely much on ultra-processed foods. It's a concern for people who eat, which is all of us. Published research has demonstrated the associations between phthalate exposure and fetal health, as we've heard quite a bit about, but also mental health. Below is I'm going to read an excerpt from a recently published article in the scientific journal Toxicology in Vitro. Perhaps the most alarming discovery has been the impact of phthalates on the developing fetus, affecting human lives well before they are born. The deleterious effects of phthalates have been found to range from causing abnormal fetal development and preterm birth to interfering with normal reproductive and neurological development, extending well into the postnatal period. In addition, there's been many pretty convincing studies that have demonstrated strong associations between phthalate exposure and the risk of depression and emotional and behavioral disorders. Prior to 1970, food labels weren't required on packaged food. Could you imagine purchasing foods now without the food label on it? The same concept applies to the content of phthalates in foods. Consumers have a right to transparency so that they can make informed choices, especially in light of contaminants that may cause harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baumer. I do have actually one quick question for you, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Or maybe it's two, and maybe it's not quick. I don't know. But the question is, so do phthalates, do they accumulate in your body? And is that part of the concern? Is there, could you give us sort of a more, I guess, nuanced understanding of the nature of the threat?
Yes, I can provide a little bit of information and follow up with more details. But the body does have some regulatory mechanisms to eliminate phthalates that are in the body, but they're coming in as fast as the body can eliminate them. And they may even be coming in faster than our body can eliminate them. So there is some accumulation in the body. Yes.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay. Our next testifier is recorded, and Nick's going to play that for us. While he's doing that, though, Mr. Broughton and Mr. Morley, if you would come up so we're ready for you when we are. Mr. Broughton, actually, if you'd like, you could state your full name for the record, and we'll take care of you during our IT interlude.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members of the committee, Darren Broughton. I'm the Executive Director of Minnesota AgriGrowth, a broad statewide coalition of food and agriculture companies and organizations dedicated to advancing food and agriculture in this great state. I want to say thank you to Senator Gustafson for bringing this important topic forward. Phthalates are an issue that we should be looking at because every family wants to make sure the food on their table, in their fridge, and in their pantry is safe. And that's why the food industry has eliminated most uses of phthalates in food packaging. Unfortunately, Senate File 188 in its current form is unworkable for four main reasons. First, we must follow the science and data. While the European Commission and China have determined separate health limits or concentration levels for phthalates, there is no health-based value for phthalates in food in Minnesota or anywhere else in this country. Sharing phthalate concentrations in food products without clearly identifying scientific health values puts every food company at risk of litigation and misinformation campaigns. And that's why it's essential for Minnesota to act responsibly. Second, the Obama, Biden, and Trump administrations have been reevaluating phthalates regulations. In May of 2022, the FDA removed 23 phthalates from the use in food packaging. In September of 2022, the FDA started a robust process to review new toxicology and scientific information on the use of the 9 remaining phthalates authorized for use. The FDA is still reviewing the more than 24,000 comments and data submitted, and it's important that we let the federal process continue. Third, Minnesota is the home to more than 700 brands, an essential food, an entrepreneurial food hub. Some of Minnesota's latest and largest food sensations, from Boom Chicka Pop, which, by the way, I love saying, Northland Lefse, and Johnny Pops, may not have ever started if Senate File 188 were in effect. An unintended consequence would be empty grocery and retailers' shelves, as small food companies would bypass Minnesota. The current bill does not support our food entrepreneurs and could turn our large food hub into a food deserted island. Lastly, Senate File 188 does not reduce phthalates in our food systems. We need to better understand where the phthalates are coming from, whether that is in the packaging, whether in processing, or somewhere else. We need to address the problem and not create new ones. That's why Minnesota AgriGrowth is committed to working with Senator Gustafson and others to continue this conversation and making sure we're making meaningful progress to ensure our food system remains safe and secure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Broden. Still no sound, so while we work on that, Mr. Morley, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready, please.
Senator Gustafson, Chair Putnam, and members of the committee, my name is Andrew Morley, and I'm with the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. Our membership includes more than 6,300 businesses of all sizes from every industry across the state, along with over 500,000 employees. Thank you for the chance to testify on SF 188, legislation that creates new reporting and labeling requirements on products manufactured or sold in Minnesota. The Chamber and its members are committed to ensuring that foods offered to the consumer are accessible and safe. However, the labeling and testing requirements in SF 188 do not fit with our modern food supply chains. Ortho-phthalates were once key components in wide-ranging applications, including in food packaging. Phthalates made plastics flexible, durable, and workable in manufacturing settings. As cost-effective replacements have come to market, phthalates have largely been replaced by alternatives in direct food packaging. Yet, the bill before us today creates another pair of mandates on businesses addressing compounds, which for the most part are declining in use. Testing every packaged food product would be a massive undertaking and creates more questions than answers. One concern is whether there is enough laboratory capacity to handle such an influx in testing. Another is a potential uptick in litigation with such broad mandates. Further, testing and labeling does not necessarily indicate a source. For example, trace amounts of,
I'm sorry about that, but could you just say, let's get ready to rumble?
Let's get ready to rumble. Did it work? No.
We'll try to fix it in the interim on this one.
Next time. We'll plan it next time. Further, testing and labeling does not necessarily indicate a source. Should I just speak out of the mic?
I apologize, Mr. Morley. We're still working on this. Are we good?
I think we're good to go.
Thank you to the agriculture, veterans, broadband, and rural development communities for the opportunity to provide my testimony. My name is Zeke McKinney, and I'm an occupational and environmental medicine physician at Health Partners and an affiliate assistant professor at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health. Thank you to the agriculture, veterans, broadband, and rural development communities.
I'm sorry, Mr. Morley. You can. I'm sorry, Mr. Morley. We should be okay for now.
No worries. Better?
Yeah, feel free.
Further, testing and labeling does not necessarily indicate a source. For example, trace amounts of phthalates may have contacted the product due to a supply chain conveyor belt, a glove worn by a worker at the line, or one of any other possibilities, indicating phthalates were not intentionally added to the product. Which begs the question, how can we better address the source of compounds as manufacturing with phthalates continues to diminish? While we appreciate the A1 amendment offered in the House that clarifies intent, cuts provisions regarding details of labeling, noticing the Agriculture Commissioner in detailed results testing, that updated bill would still create significant compliance challenges. Meanwhile, this legislation remains unchanged from what was introduced. To that end, the Chamber commits to continue dialogue with Senator Gustafson, the House bill author, this committee, and other stakeholders who wish to address food safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. Again, I apologize for our technical issues. Are we ready for the video?
Thank you, guys. Nice to meet you.
Thank you to the agriculture, veterans, broadband, and rural development community for the opportunity to provide my testimony. My name is Zeke McKinney, and I'm an occupational and environmental medicine physician at Health Partners and an affiliate assistant professor at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health. My specialty of occupational and environmental medicine is all about environmental hazards. My clinical practice focuses on environmental exposures in all kinds of settings. I support Senate File 188, requiring the testing of phthalates in packaged food products in Minnesota. Because of their prolific use in plastic manufacturing and the wide-ranging use of plastics, phthalates are more or less ubiquitous in the environment, in animals, and most notably in human beings.
Provides a challenge to insurmountable for us at this point. So members, that concludes our testimony. That concludes our testimony on this issue. We can open up to some questions if you have any. All right, seeing none, that did exactly what it was supposed to do, Senator Gustafson. Thank you for informing us about an issue. Thank you to everyone who testified for educating us a little bit. So let's move on now to Senate File 2473. Senator Hoffman, tell us a little bit about what you got.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I want to spend the next hour and a half telling you what I got. Is that okay? I'm glad you're laughing. I didn't even get dames to laugh at that one. No, seriously, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is really, we're proposing is a $2.5 million appropriation in fiscal year 2026 to the Minnesota Department of Agriculture to fund a grant, Minnesota Black Farmers Association. This grant allows a cooperative of black veteran farmers to purchase advanced 21st century farming equipment, such as skid steers and John Deere tractors with attachments. Not that I would leave out Minneapolis-Moline, but this initiative does some really important things, and this is really what it's about. And if you look at the 6 things, we honor the service of black veterans and farmers and supports their transition into agriculture. We are addressing the historic disparities in access to land, equipment, and capital for black farmers and veterans. We're strengthening Minnesota's agriculture economy by equipping farmers with modern tools to increase productivity and sustainability. 4, we're promoting a cooperative model. We are encouraging the shared resources, mentorship, and community-based growth. And you'll hear about that in the folks that are coming up here to testify. We support the veterans' wellness through meaningful, purposeful, driven work in farming. And finally, we invest in the equity and innovation. We ensure that agriculture in Minnesota is inclusive and forward-thinking, Mr. Chair. It's a smart, impactful investment that helps build a more resilient and equitable future for Minnesota's farming communities. And with me, I know Angela Dawson is on the Zoomerang, but Julius Cochran is here as well. And so I think Julius is coming up. Right? Yes. Or if you want to go to
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. Mr. Cochran, if you would please come on up, have a seat, state your full name for the record, and then tell us what you got.
Yes, my name is Julius Cochran. Thank you for inviting me here today. I appreciate you guys. I want to just start off by just kind of recapping a little bit of history of the African-American people in this country. Hold on one second, just grabbing my notes. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of the African American and black farmers in this country. In the early 1800s, during the era of slavery, both free and indentured African Americans lived in Minnesota and contributed to the agricultural space and what we know as the Great Breadbasket of America. The Homestead Act of 1862 played a significant role in shaping the inequities that we see today in the Midwest. While it allowed settlers to claim 160 acres of land, black farmers faced significant discrimination and systemic barriers that often limited their access to these opportunities. Despite their agricultural experience and desire for land ownership, the migration pathways of African Americans in this country, the migration pathways of African American people were deeply influenced by the legacy of slavery, not only by white Americans, but also by the 5 civilized tribes: the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Creek, and the Seminole. These tribes, under pressure from European American influence, adopted the practice of slavery. During the forced relocation known as the Trail of Tears in the 1830s, they brought enslaved African Americans with them to Indian Territory, also known as present-day Oklahoma. After the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation of the 13th Amendment in 1865 abolished slavery in the United States. In 1866, the treaties with the United States and the 5 civilized tribes required that they emancipate their slaves and offer citizenship to them and their descendants, leading to the creation of the freedmen communities. This history demonstrates the intertwined experiences between America, the African American, and the Native Americans, shaping the migration patterns that formated in the Midwest and beyond. The challenges the black farmer encountered, numerous challenges including racial discrimination, economic hardship, and violence. They often had limited access to credit and resources, making it difficult to sustain and grow their farms. Discriminatory practices in lending and land ownership, as well as outright violence and land theft, further hindered their progress and contributed to the decline of the black land ownership overall. The Great Migration of 1916 through the 1970s, also known as our Trail of Terror. During the Great Migration, many freedmen were expelled from the 5 civilized tribes, and the African American in the South faced lynching, arson, and other forms of racial terror, prompting millions to flee. Approximately 6 million African Americans moved from the Rural South and Indian Territory to the Midwest and other regions. This movement significantly impacted agricultural practices and reshaped communities. Black farmers brought with them the wealth of agricultural knowledge and experience, contributing to the diversity and innovation in farming techniques in their new homes. The contributions and innovations, despite these challenges, black farmers made significant contributions in agriculture. They developed co-op systems and practices in community organizations and supported mutual aid and resources shaping that helped sustain the communities and improve agriculture productivity. During the civil rights movement, black farmers played a crucial role in advocating for equal rights and access to resources, or organizations like the Southern Co-ops and so on. The modern challenges that we have today. Black farmers continue to face challenges including related to land ownership and access to markets. In Minnesota and across the Midwest, black owners often lack access to modern equipment and resources needed for large-scale sustainable farming, which limits their ability to compete in today's agricultural markets. In conclusion, the history of the black farmer in the Midwest is a testament to their resilience and the contributions to American agriculture. It is essential to recognize and support the diversity within this vital sector. By doing so, we honor the legacy and the work, and we move together in an equitable future for all farmers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cochran. Ms. Khalif, if you would please come on up, if you'd like. Oh, you're not going to? Okay.
I think Ms. Dawson.
Ms. Dawson, you should be online now. If you would please state your full name for the record, turn on your camera, and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Hello, good afternoon, committee. Can you hear me pretty well?
Yeah, we hear you fine, and welcome back.
Thank you, thank you. For some reason, my video's frozen. I may just try to move so that you can see my face a little better. But for right now, we'll just go ahead. My name is Angela Dawson. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee, for your time today. And thank you, Mr. Cochran, for that great introduction. We thought it was really important for the committee to understand really the reason why we're bringing forth a request like this. We did some kind of informal meetings with some of our legislators over the last couple of weeks and just found that it was really important for us to share more information about black farmers in the state of Minnesota and the country, because this information hasn't been always readily available for folks. I am a fourth generation farmer, and I should say that there is a significant history of black farmers in Minnesota that we have recently found out is not well known. And so some of the reasons why we found that we don't have resources is because folks don't know that we're here. And even though I am a fourth generation farmer, I am a descendant of what they call the first 85. The first 85 are a collection of 18 families who settled in Fergus Falls, Minnesota in the late 1800s. Black farmers that were forced removed, as Julius mentioned, and they all settled in Fergus Falls, Minnesota in the late 1800s. I am a descendant of that legacy. They were all farmers that came to Minnesota to contribute. They continue to face some hardships and some discrimination and weren't able to all settle on farms, but they did the best they could. I also wanted to mention the legacy of Nellie Stone Johnson, who is also a farmer, born in the early 1900s here in Minnesota, was a significant, was a mentor to Hubert H. Humphrey, and significantly contributed to the creation of the Farmer Labor Party. And then I also think that it's important for folks to know about Frederick McKinley, who was an inventor and agriculturalist in the northern part of Minnesota, whose legacy is created the Thermo King business. He created refrigerated trucking and was able to create the technology that allowed us to transport perishable foods. These are all significant contributions of African American farmers and agriculturalists who have not only significantly shaped our agricultural system, but also created inventions that we still benefit from today. And so the reason why we're asking for support from the committee is so that we can continue the legacy of our ancestors and that we can be equal participants in the agricultural system in the state and in this region. I don't know if you have heard, but there is an example for folks to know about the restriction of resources, is that there's been recently some $10 billion that was granted from the USDA for emergency support for farmers because of the trade tariffs. And these funds are only available for large commodity farmers who have large acreages and equipment already. And this is the kind of position that we're asking the committee to consider for its African American farmers in the state of Minnesota, so that we can reestablish ourselves, so that we can be a part of economic progress of agriculture in the state. Minnesota is the 11th agricultural state in production, and that is without recognizing the contributions of black farmers. And so we're just hoping that from this conversation that our senators would be more inclined to learn more and acknowledge and the contributions of Black farmers and that we can be able to contribute more significantly to the agricultural system in the state. And so I thank you for your time and would love to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dawson. Members, any questions? I want to thank you, Mr. Cochran and Ms. Dawson, for the history that we got to learn today. That's important stuff, and I very much appreciate it. Senator Hoffman, do you have any statements you'd like to make?
No, Mr. Chair, I think there's a story to be told with Nellie Johnson, whose statue is right across in the Capitol here, and it's just that there's something about that enriched history that Ms. Dawson and Mr. Cochran are getting at in Minnesota that we need to do something and not overlook that. So I appreciate your time and effort on this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Senator Hoffman.
And I guess if I could say one last thing, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Cochran.
You know, I think it's important to point out, too, for us that, you know, as we've been connecting with Black farmers across the state, you know, land access is an issue, but we do have land, you know. And for us that own land, you know, the common traits that we're finding is that we're being exploited by our neighbors. And the reason why I say that is because we don't have modern day equipment to fully access our land and to grow at our full potential, right? And we can't do like small things like cut our grass and bale our hay, you know. And our neighbors, they're very, I would say they're nice people, you know. You know, I have nothing negative to say about them, but you know, they would, you know, come to us and say, well, you know, we'll cut your grass, you know, we'll bale your hay, but they don't incorporate us in the profits of the distribution and selling the hay, you know. So therefore, we're kind of being exploited, and we don't have autonomy over our land, you know. And that's the reason why we're here, because we want autonomy over our land, and we want access to our land, you know. And this is why we want to, you know, want to establish an equipment fund to get this equipment so that we can share, you know, with our people and, you know, help them gain autonomy over their land, you know. And then not only just that, you know, because you have to be able to grow in bulk and sell in bulk for this game to be sustainable, right? You know, for there to be any real profit margins in there, right? And if we can profit and if we can create markets that we can sustain our land, you know, and then we could further prevent land loss, you know. So there's a whole lot of reasons why we need this equipment. So it's not just we're not trying to be selfish. We're not trying to, you know, just come up here and say, hey, you know, we just want this big chunk of money to get all this equipment, you know. And these tractors, they cost a pretty penny. Like, they're not cheap, you know. You know, and I understand that the Minnesota Department of Agriculture offers $20,000 equipment grants, but that's not enough. Like, you know, for a lot of us Black farmers, they're out there working with manual tools, you know, tilling to till and work the land, and that's not sustainable for us. We have to be brought into the 21st century of agriculture so that we can compete in these markets.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Very helpful. And thank you, Senator Hoffman, for bringing the bill and give us a chance to talk about these things. And again, thanks to all the testifiers for the illuminating history. Our next order of business is Mr. Cheney, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Good day. Thank you for hearing us today on this very important historical moment as we move forward to advance farming, not just for the sake of urban farmers, but for farmers all across this state. As you very well know, one of the only indexes of real growth in the ag movement has been through urban farming, what I like to refer to as the changing face of agriculture. Good day, everyone. My name is Michael Cheney, for those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting. I was, if you will, a pioneer in this field of urban farming. I approached the Representative Poppy about 7, 8 years ago and asked her to, because I was trying to buy the last remaining greenhouse in North Minneapolis, and went to approach the Ag Finance Committee to secure funding to acquire that property. Unfortunately, we quibbled over the definition of what urban farming. I remember to this day she asked me, she said, well, Michael, what is urban farming? I thought about it for a few minutes and I said, farming in urban areas. And so that's birthed the Emerging Farmers office here in the state of Minnesota. And I remember going to, she said, well, I don't think my colleagues will really get this. Take some time, educate us. And so we persevered upon the urging of many to really bring to the realization. And so we created the Agri-Bill that this last year was able to afford $3.5 million to farmers all across the state. Representative Hoffman asked me, he said, Michael, do you want this to be a pilot project in North Minneapolis? And I said, of course not. I said, if Minnesota is going to maintain its legacy as a farm state, it's important that we bring this forward. And so that legislation, of which I'm very proud of. Also, Representative Karen Clark was one of the authors of that bill that really moved Minnesota to be kind of leaders, if you will, on the national front. I think this legislation also follows suit with that, and that if we can really continue to move forward to not only use farming to grow the next generation of farmers, but to add the required infrastructure, the two Twin Towers, if we're going to change the trajectory of agriculture in this state, are centered around 1, infrastructure, and number 2, workforce development strategies. So these urban farmers, these BIPOC farmers, these immigrant farmers are the changing face of agriculture, and this legislation is creating the much required infrastructure to be able to advance all of our shared mutual. How do we raise agency for all? That's really what the purpose of this legislation is, and I'm very thankful for the work of the leaders that have continued to march down this road to a more fair and just economy. So thank you, Senator Putnam. You've been a real champion for equity and inclusion, and so we'd all love to work at your side to really advance this legislation and make sure that 150 years from now that agriculture in the state of Minnesota, in rural communities, in suburban communities, and in urban communities, building that pathway to higher education and that pathway to a greener future. So thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. I appreciate your testimony and your presence. Members, our next order of business is the Women's Environmental Institute Farm Incubator Project. Senator Kupec, I think, doesn't have to present the bill because we don't really have a bill. You don't have to if you don't want to. Do you want to? All right. So this behind the scenes negotiation occurring there. Ms. Khalif, Representative Clark, and Mr. So, could you all feel free to all three come up, please, and tell us a little bit about your project. As you go through an order, though, please obviously state your full name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be here before you for this informational hearing, and especially just hearing the testimony from the previous speakers and bills that are before you. It feels really appropriate to be bringing you an opportunity to work with us on a bill that will really hit the ground with the kind of opportunity that was being requested before. And so let me just introduce myself, Karen Clark. Title I'll share with you is I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Environmental Institute, former legislator who spent a number of time on the Ag Committee in the House and got to know some of you then. And so again, as I said, it's an honor to be here back with you. The bill that we're bringing you today is relating to agriculture. The Women's Environmental Institute is a small nonprofit educational and training organization whose main strategy is teaching people how to do organic farming and teaching them from the very basics of putting the seed in the ground to the cultivation, to the harvesting, marketing, and all of that. And so I have a couple of people here today who will be talking with you about some of their experience working with the Women's Environmental Institute. And I would be glad to, answer any questions. I did provide to you a letter of support from one of the organizations we've worked with over the years, the HAPA, the Hmong American Farmers Association. And I think also I gave you our annual report from last year, so you can check us out and see some of the, graphically, some of the things that we're doing. The bill before you would help us continue to expand our Incubator project, farming project. It's a program that WI has been doing really since we were founded in 2003. In those days, the words incubator farming weren't known, they weren't common. We just talked about helping farmers who were with us or wanted to be working with us to have access to our land, to have some of the resources to be able to grow and learn how to grow the farm products they were interested. Often, we started with, I think our first incubator farmers were Native people who were part of our founding organization. We had many Hmong women farmers who were with us for about 6 years learning how to grow organically on our land. And then in this case and in the cases that follow with Latino farmers and Black farmers, all of them have had some opportunities to go forward with their own farming operations. So we're proud of helping do that. But it takes resources, and we're a little nonprofit. And so we're here today to ask you for some help to help us develop our infrastructure to serve those individuals, those aspiring immigrants and other beginning farmers who need a place to have land. As was described earlier, there are many barriers that prevent people from getting access to land. There's discrimination based on race, there's cost and poverty issues that come up, and some of the discussion that was earlier about environmental problems that people face are related to those two factors. So the Women's Environmental Institute has always taken those directly head on, and we're proud of some of the successes we've had, but again, as I mentioned, we need help to continue. So you'll see that what the bill offers is we're going to provide some funding directly to the farmers who do come to us and say, hey, can we have opportunity to farm on your land and learn with you and use some of your resources? And we're going to actually, what we want to do is to expand the infrastructure that we have to be able to serve them. Food processing is very important. It has to be done in a way that's safe and that provides the best product to the consumers. And so you'll see throughout the bill here that we are trying to expand our own ability to provide good food processing opportunities. And the education and training that we are pretty well known for, we want to be able to continue to expand that, and I think you'll hear a little bit about that from these folks here. And we want to make sure that we continue one other principle that WI has, which is we serve both urban and rural aspiring beginning farmers. We've always done that, and we want to continue to do that. So I'll just stop there. Those are the parts of the bill that you can look at. Be glad to answer any questions. We're coming to you, I think, with a modest financial request, and we know this year's it's an informational hearing, but find that you have any opportunities to help us, we'll take it now or whenever it's available. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Farheel Khalif would like to continue.
Ms. Khalif, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Farheel Khalif. I am with Somali American Farmers Institute, SAFI. And this year, SAFI are continuing to farm at North Branch Women Environmental Institute. SAFI has been farming since 2017. 2017, I basically started back with my uncle who owns a farm in Hutchinson. He really wanted me to continue and be educated, the land access and the soil health and all the American way that you farm about the land that we don't know nothing about. As an immigrant farmer, my uncle took me a place called the Big River Farm, the food group, which I'm grateful. I've been with my uncle for 3 years. Then 2020, 2021, I took his advice and I signed up with that program at Big River Farm 2020, 3 years later. So this is what happens. You keep moving around because this is not your land. You got to keep farming, you got to keep buying things, and you got to work full-time, and you got to work as a farmer full-time. And I'm grateful. Last year I reached out to I was going to say Representative Clark, but Karen Clark and her team at Women Environmental Institute. I've been attending the annual Will Allen Soil Health Composite Farming for the last 12 years. Having already relationship with the land, and I really think my farming as a sorghum farmer, I needed the biggest space to farm, so now I'm leasing 2 acres at the Women Environmental Institute. Sorghum is something that I grew up back home, and I think that last year I did some experiment thinking that it can be done in Minnesota, and I started my first sorghum in Big River Farm last year. And then when I saw, I expanded a little bit more at the Women Environmental Institute, and guess what? I did my first sorghum syrup last year. And really that showed me it's doable, but I'm gonna grow more, but land access is a struggle in the state of Minnesota. As a Black farmer, Black woman, immigrant who's from Africa who really need this opportunity is very struggling. Especially right now, it's not normal what's happening in our country. And as you heard earlier, where Jules testified, and Angela, and Black African-American farmers who's been here before we got here. I believe that they struggle as the racism of this country continues when it comes to resources and economics. Black farmers is always on the last on the bus, all the way in the back. So this will help us, this bill in front of you, will help not only Safi and Farhio, and also Safi also have a small urban farm on Lake Street, where we train the youth and the women that also we transform them sometime from the city of Minneapolis to the rural where we farm in North Branch. Senator, this will provide a support these African immigrant farmers that farm in this land. And not only that we farm in, but also we're taking classes in educational. Right now, I'm enrolled in a class with Thea. Did I say it right? Chair, yeah. Chair is from Senegal. So I'm just saying that we must support Black farmers in the state of Minnesota. This is must. This is something that you will be proud to see when you see small programs like Safi or other ones before me. We struggle because we've been brushed off. This is an opportunity in the state of Minnesota to invest the Black farmers in Minnesota, especially farmers who are struggling. Right now, the opportunity that we're receiving from, like I said earlier, several programs that open up their doors to give us a land access. What does this mean? We keep buying equipments, we keep buying whatever that we need, but then we move on to the next space, into the next space. Please support this bill that will help continuing our farming in the state of Minnesota. And I really appreciate for the opportunity, and I hope you consider this bill to be included this year. That is just our hope. But if it's not, we understand. But also please support Senate File 2473. And you heard earlier what Julius and Angela said, and I'm also advocating for that bill as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and member. My name is John So. I'm a beginner farmer and student of WEI with that program, Farmer as a Business. And I'm supporting this because as an experience right now, they're giving me an opportunity to attend the farming as a business as a minority. And I didn't have even a way, to access to this kind of program, but they give me that opportunity, to start the educational program because I couldn't get access to land. So my plan is get the educational program first, and then, go move for the land access and by surfing to all of that, I find out land access is the issue. So, but with WEI, with their land, they do incubator. So by the time I get my own land, I will have a place somewhere, that's established with equipment and land, and I can start there, and moving forward until I get my own land. So I won't be long, and I will advocate this bill or, to fund it this year or next year to help people like me and, a lot of us as an African immigrant, they hear, but sometimes the information access is an issue. So me, as an experience of that, I'm very grateful for WEI and honored for the first time to talk for such committee like you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. So. Do we have any members have any questions about the issue? Thank you very much for your testimony. Very much appreciate you bringing this to our attention and the hard work you do getting new farmers to farm.
We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Senator Kupec, Senate File 2653. But just in general, we're going to be talking about a solar pollinator program special license plate about agrivoltaic solar sites. Senator Kupec, when you're ready. Members and members of the public, I do want to do a quick reminder and ask us to be as efficient as possible as we could with testimony, because we are in the space of potentially running out of time if we aren't conscientious in that regard. So, Senator Kupec, if you would, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2016, a coalition of energy, agriculture, and conservation organizations worked together to pass the Pollinator-Friendly Solar Act, the nation's first ground cover standard for solar facilities, using seed mixtures which cost less than 0.1% of the overall project budget. The flexible and science-based standard established minimum requirements for solar site owners to implement in order to claim that solar projects provide habitat and beneficial to pollinators, songbirds, and game birds. The resulting program, managed by Minnesota's Board of Water Soil Resources, has been extraordinarily successful. A 5-year longitudinal study showed 20 times increase in native bumblebees and other pollinators on these projects. However, the program is operating in limited capacity because it does not have dedicated funding. There was no time at that time to get a fiscal note in. Senate File 2653 also updates what was a nation-leading standard at the time to include a definition of agrivoltaics, the combination of agriculture with solar energy generation, and provides some funding towards the nation-leading research at facilities including the University of Minnesota's West Central Research and Outreach Station. Grazing animals, including cows and sheep, enjoy the shade under the around these panels. As this committee is aware, solar projects have expanded throughout the state, but how do we best protect farmland? Testifiers today will show you how solar facilities designed for stacked benefits and dual use results in more options for this production and pollinator habitat. The bill also proposes a voluntary dedicated funding mechanism of a license plate featuring a solar facility, grazing animals, honeybee hives, and wildlife. The license plate artwork was created by Replace Design Studio. They are the same firm that designed the logo on the Minnesota State Fair, and in that another reference to Johnny Pops today. This was commissioned by the Natural Resource Services of Sauk Rapids with contributions from employees of the U.S. Solar and Bear Honey, and I can show you a lovely what this license plate would look like right here. There's an even bigger one, so.
I think you need to show the world. We should turn those around, especially the one that has your name on it.
There you go. I do feel a little like the guy at Hee Haw who used to hold up the sign and go, but there you are. With that, I'll go to testifiers, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kupec. Mr. Schultz, if you could please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Chair Putnam, members of the committee, my name is not Vanna. My name is Rob Schultz. I serve as Vice President and Executive Director for Audubon Upper Mississippi River Region of the National Audubon Society, and I'm a resident of Fridley, living in Senate District 39. For over 120 years, the National Audubon Society's work has historically been focused on habitat conservation. Some people are surprised when they hear that we have set ambitious goals to support the deployment of 100 gigawatts of renewable energy and electric transmission on the grid by 2028. We came to this work by following our science, which concluded that we must decarbonize our economy for birds and, by extension, our agriculture, ecosystems, and communities. Audubon works with energy developers and policymakers to focus on solutions that avoid, minimize, offset, and monitor impacts on birds. While the build-out of renewables such as solar has some negative impacts on birds, these are solvable problems. As Minnesota works to implement ambitious clean energy goals, like the expansion of well-sited agrivoltaics, it is important to implement as many multi-benefit strategies as possible. Senate File 2653 consists of two parts. Audubon supports both approaches as they reflect necessary multi-benefit strategies to accelerate the clean energy deployment while minimizing negative impacts on birds, wildlife, and people. The Habitat-Friendly Solar Program is a cost-effective, successful program managed by Minnesota's Board of Water and Soil Resources. This program does not have a dedicated funding stream. As Minnesota implements ambitious renewable energy goals, we will see significantly more solar projects throughout the state, and habitat-friendly solar is unlikely to be able to keep up with the demand. With this bill, you have the opportunity to create the nation's first license plate featuring a solar facility, as well as a voluntary and dedicated funding mechanism that does not impact Minnesota's general fund. By prioritizing native plants at solar sites, Minnesota can meet clean energy goals while restoring pockets of lost habitat and benefiting farms. Establishing high-quality pollinator habitat at solar sites supports diverse pollinator populations and can provide high-quality forage for integrated livestock at the solar site while also supporting critical pollination of nearby agricultural fields. Thank you for your time today. And please enjoy the beef sticks. They are from Audubon Conservation Ranching Certified Farms that implement our conservation strategies to the benefit of grassland birds and farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schultz, for the presentation and also for the meat. Ms. Wiebe?
Thank you. It's Webby.
Webby, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Webby. I'm the Senior Policy and Regulatory Affairs Associate for the Minnesota Solar Energy Industry Association. We are a trade organization of solar and storage installers and developers throughout Minnesota with about 170 members. And from a broad array of the facets of our industry, including now pollinator-friendly businesses that are also starting to move into grazing for solar sites. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate File 2693 today. Agrivoltaics is the practice of combining solar energy with agriculture production on the same land. And this can include growing crops, raising livestock, or cultivating pollinator habitats underneath and between solar panels. Senate File 2693 seeks to establish a statutory definition for agrivoltaics to build upon Minnesota's successful 2016 statute that defined pollinator-friendly solar. Adopting this definition into law will enable Minnesota to quantify and encourage the benefits of habitat and agriculture-friendly solar site management practices. We are enthusiastic about this bill because it creates an opportunity for the solar industry to support rural Minnesota's agriculture economy by encouraging dual land use. Solar developers will need to partner with agricultural specialists to perform the agricultural elements of a project, which will create new and additional economic opportunities for farmers and others in rural communities. And the potential for regional economic benefits could be substantial. The legislation offers economic, environmental, and agricultural benefits without imposing any mandates. It is voluntary, and it does not require any incentives. It is funded by the solar pollinator-friendly license plate. In conclusion, we urge you to support support Senate File 2693, and we are available for questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Webby. Ms. Hollinger?
Yes.
So please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you. I am Colleen Hollinger. I'm a director at Natural Resource Services, and we are a thriving native restoration business based in central Minnesota. I personally live in Senator Howe's district. Our company has restored thousands of acres of shorter stature native prairie under solar arrays. And we're very successful, thanks in part to the habitat-friendly solar bill that was established in 2016. Really, fewer pieces of legislation have accomplished as much to restore native prairie in Minnesota as that 2016 bill. As you've been hearing, it creates habitat for songbirds, game birds, monarchs, and native insects all across the state, not just in large tracts of land that maybe have been willed or turned over to the state as a gift. So all across the state, the solar habitat bill has grown to be great for businesses like ours and agriculture, as we now are using sheep grazing for efficient site management. As you heard from Senator Kupec, in 2016, our Board of Water and Soil Resources, which we call Bowser, was designated to oversee the program. SF 2653, but they were assigned without any ongoing funding. SF 2063 remedies this by providing voluntary opt-in specialty license plate to provide ongoing funding for Bowser. Why do we need another specialty plate? Because solar will continue to grow in Minnesota, and Bowser will struggle to keep up with site monitoring without adequate ongoing financial support. This program in Minnesota has been replicated across the United States. They've copied our Bowser Solar Farm solar card, and so we should be really proud of that, and we want to continue the quality of that program, and this license plate takes the burden off of general funding and instead provides voluntary user-sourced funding. And there are thousands of us in Minnesota who will voluntarily pay the plate fee to support the Bowser program, because the beautiful plate image, as you've seen, really promotes pollinator habitat, songbirds, and agrivoltaics. We do encourage you to support this bipartisan pro-business, pro-agriculture, and pro-pollinator SF 2653. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hollinger. Ms. Lenners-Coy, I've just realized I've never said your name out loud before.
You did it exactly right, though.
I apologize if that was wrong. But if you could please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Chair Putnam and members of the committee. Sophia Lenners-Coy, I'm the Executive Director of the Food Group, and I am far from an agrivoltaics expert, so please don't ask me questions about that. But I'm here to just talk about a real-life example of how dual use in solar facilities can really impact land access issues that we know so many emerging farmers are facing. And it really dovetails nicely to some of the testimony that we've heard earlier today. Through our Big River Farms Incubator training program, we've heard from so many folks that land access is a challenge. And so we just completed a pilot project with US Solar, where we brought 2 emerging farmers to farm between the solar panels at a facility that they have in Big Lake. It is certainly not without lots of learnings, but it is really incredibly promising, to the point that we're going to have 6 farmers farming at Big Lake this coming season. In collaboration with US Solar, we've put in a well so we can have ongoing irrigation at that site. And what is really exciting is that because this site is owned by US Solar, they are open to doing long-term leases with farmers. So looking at 5 or possibly 10-year leases. So really solving this kind of land access piece. So that is our kind of interest in seeing a definition and any incentives that we can have for solar developers to think about land access and ways to support emerging farmers through this work.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard-Coy. Our next testifier is virtual. Mr. Buchanan, if you could please turn on your microphone and your camera. State your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Hi, thank you. My name is Eric Buchanan, and I direct the Renewable Energy Program at the University of Minnesota West Central Research and Outreach Center. So I really appreciate any opportunity to talk about agrivoltaics, even if it's only for 2 minutes. And I'm very grateful that you're considering, or anything that the state considers to support agrivoltaics. It's a really key part of the research we're doing at the West Central Research and Outreach Center, because agrivoltaics is right at the intersection between energy and farming and rural resiliency. And by rural resiliency, I really mean farmer resiliency. So we're doing a lot of research with dairy cows. You can see behind me, this is one of the first arrays we know of that was put in high enough for dairy cows to graze under. We've seen no negative effects on forage growth for the cows. In fact, we have documented that it actually reduces heat stress in cows to have access to the shade from the solar panels. We're also working with a group of farmers outside of Olivia who on their own have put in a 40 kilowatt solar array of their own design in their corn and bean fields. And they've done a bunch of work to spread it out so they can use their normal farming equipment through these panels. And we're helping with some data collection and doing some research to show how that works. So agrivoltaics is a use of land that helps Minnesota meet its climate and energy goals, but it also keeps farming on farmland while providing an additional and importantly stable income stream for farmers. Agrivoltaic solar is a local resource, so Minnesota doesn't have any oil, coal, or natural gas, but we have abundant sunshine and wind energy. And this local resource can be harvested by farmers, and it's used locally, that electricity is used locally, and it strengthens rural economies. There's probably farmers right now that are worried a little bit about what kind of impact tariffs might have on soybean prices and things like that. But the price of electricity is something that's determined locally, and it can really support rural communities. There's over 4 million acres of pasture land in Minnesota, and there's over 4 times that much of cropland. And so there's a lot of area that could be used for solar agrivoltaics. But we still see a lot of rural opposition to farmland being taken out of production and put into solar panels. And so agrivoltaics is that way to address that need. So we're not taking anything out. We're doing both. We're doing the farming and we're doing the energy production, and everybody can be happy. And so we fully support this bill, and even something as simple as a license plate showing solar panels and agrivoltaics can help affect public perception, and that's where we need to go. It's going to be a big part of the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Member singular. Senator Dames, do you have any questions? Senator Kupec, you got anything else you want to say?
Just add this, Mr. Chair. You know, this is, I think, one of those other tools in the toolbox for farmers, particularly smaller farmers and dairy farmers, for a way that they can also diversify that farm economy.
Well, I appreciate you bringing this up. Agrivoltaics is incredibly fascinating and I think has tremendous potential. I was talking to someone, he does have a question. The committee does have a question. Senator Dames.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You just prompted a question. In rural Minnesota, we have an awful lot of CREP land, land that's into the CREP program. And it would be nice if we could get the folks, the federal government, to allow us to have some of these solar units on that CREP land, because we're seeing an instance here where they're raised up high enough to where the cattle and stuff can get under them. Purpose a lot of that CREP land is to promote a lot of wildlife, and so this would be an excellent opportunity to have wildlife and creating energy both at the same time with some of this CREP land.
I think that there are tremendous potentials with this. The story I was going to share is that I was talking to someone about 2 years ago about agrivoltaics, and they were talking about the commercial implications of it, because they imagined a world where you could grow a tomato under a solar panel and then charge someone in Minneapolis $25 for it, which I think is another interesting commercial opportunity. Members, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Senator Kupec. Up next is our informational discussion of pesticides and treated seeds. Senator McEwen, if you would, please.
Hello.
How you doing? When you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, very pleased today to be able to present Senate File 3083 in an informational hearing to ensure that the #1 use of neonicotinoid insecticides or treated seeds is properly regulated to protect Minnesota's environment and people. Neonics widely pollute Minnesota's lands and waters with disastrous effects on insect populations, aquatic ecosystems, and wildlife. They threaten the future of our food systems by degrading soil and killing pollinators. And people are also widely exposed, raising cause for concern about harms to Minnesotans' health. For years, Minnesota's own agencies have been sounding the alarm about neonics and treated seeds, and yet little meaningful action has been taken. This bill takes common sense steps to ensure that the harms of pesticide-treated seeds are accounted for and addressed. It also seeks to bring an end to widespread unnecessary use of pesticides while preserving uses that benefit farmers. I'm grateful to have a number of affected Minnesotans with me today to share their perspective with the committee. With that, Mr. Chair, I would like to turn it over to our testifiers.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. Our first two testifiers are virtual. Ms. Rupp, if you would please unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, and commence your state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Erin Roop. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, cool. It's an honor and a joy to be with you all today. I'm a self-employed beekeeper. I run Pollinate Minnesota. I'm on the board of the Pollinator Stewardship Council. Thank you so much for hearing this bill. My livelihood is from and with my honeybees, not through direct pollination contracts or very large honey sales, but from experiential education, so mostly with youth in beekeeping suits, working bees with me. I've taught 45,000 people directly with live bees since starting this work. And my bee losses are in line with state and federal losses. In Minnesota, that was above 70% last year. I've been a beekeeper for 20 years. I started after the golden age of beekeeping. You used to be able to err on undermanagement. You'd get 200 pounds of honey from each hive in the fall. These days, average honey production is around 50 pounds per hive. Beekeeper labor is double what it used to be. Beekeepers have been experiencing hive death since neonicotinoids were first used in the mid-1990s. The members of and board of the Pollinator Stewardship Council, which includes many of the largest beekeeping operations in the country, have been active in good faith with pesticide regulators and pesticide manufacturers consistently over this time. And yet, compared to the early 1990s, United States agriculture is 48 times more toxic to insect life. Neonicotinoids accounted for 99% of the oral toxicity loading in 2014. It's not uncommon to come into a yard of 50 hives and to find them all dead. To have pesticide losses drive you from your generational farm and your state. The German pesticide company Bayer calls this reality the new normal. In the past 30 years, we've contributed significant effort as Minnesotans and significant taxpayer money. And, you know, personally, just a whole lot of my time. I served on Governor Dayton's Pollinator Committee. We've been at this. And yet last year's losses were the highest on record. And over these last 8 months alone, hundreds of millions of honeybees have suddenly died in this country. Honeybees are just one part of the ecosystem, and this bill addresses the systemic pesticide treatments on seeds. They are, by design, water-soluble, move through the ecosystem, and harm bees and fish and us. You'll hear more in the following testimony. I strongly support this bill and appreciate the bravery you've shown, Senator Putnam, in hearing it. It's a necessary and incremental step. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roop, for your hard work and your testimony today. I got a real quick question for you, if you don't mind. A couple years ago, Minnesota was, I think, 7th in the country in honey production. How are we doing now?
It used to be that Minnesota was like one of the golden places to be a bee.
To be
and
a
one
bee?
of the last, yeah, one of the last good spots to be a bee. We're like one of the places. Honey production it's mostly commercial folks, so folks who have more than 500 hives, and we have around 50 commercial beekeepers in Minnesota. It's harder than it used to be. And that labor number, folks are paying, double the workforce that they used to pay to manage their hives. All that said, I think, we were 7th, and I think we're still in the top 10, and I'll get back to you about where exactly we are in honey production.
Thank you. Our next testifier is also remote. Mr. Legvold, if you would, please. Could you unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, state your full name, commence your testimony when you're ready, please. Mr. Legvold, you're muted, if you would, please. Can we unmute and start again, please?
All right.
There we go. Now we're good.
My name is David Legvold. My family and I run Legvold Farms, which is located in the Northfield area. We raise corn, soybeans, hay, and are recently retired honeybee keepers. Our farm is a legacy farm. My relatives came from Norway in 1867, and our family has been farming Minnesota land since that time. Neonics cause a significant problem, and therefore my use of neonics is very limited. There are times when people espouse treatment of seeds just to be sure. I have not found that this juice is worth the squeeze. And so the use of neonics just as a prophylactic treatment is not in our playbook. I believe that monoculture can increase pest buildups. We have some farmers who do corn on corn on corn on corn, and that creates new problems. I've had many forms of insect traps placed on my fields by St. Olaf, Carleton, and University of Minnesota students. With crop rotation, populations were not above the economic threshold. If in-field assessment reveals a need to treat soybean aphids, we do so, but not with neonics. I farm land on what was our family farm that contains Rice County's only remaining trout stream. And so I guard that trout stream resource jealously and want to keep the trout healthy and the insect populations around it robust. So it is important that based on my experience, we can be using neonics responsibly. I did a small research project in that I asked 8 of my farmer colleagues what they knew about neonics. None of them knew anything about it, except for one who is a seed dealer, and she explained thoroughly what the role was. So I believe that as a retired environmental sciences educator, I believe strongly in education and would urge the implementation of education for farmers regarding neonics, their role, their use, their responsible management. Thank you, Chair Putman, for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Legvold. Our next testifiers, Ms. Hayner and Ms. Gorchev, if you would please come up and sit at the table for us, please. And we'll begin with Ms. Hayner, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
I'm not used to the microphone.
That's all good.
Thank you, Chair Putnam and members of the committee. My name is Monta Hainer, and I am a member of Trout Unlimited and a Minnesota Master Naturalist. I'm the president of the local Fly Fishers International Club. I'm an Orvis endorsed guide through the Driftless Fly Fishing Company in Preston, Minnesota. And I've been fly fishing in southeast Minnesota for 27 years. I support Senate File 3083 because clean water is essential for healthy trout populations, but runoff from neonic treated seeds threatens that. Knowledge of aquatic insects is crucial to successful fly fishing and guiding. I've not seen large hatches of aquatic insects since 2019. I remember the last big caddis hatch was when I was teaching fly casting for fly fishing women in Minnesota at the park in Preston. Suddenly, there were caddisflies rising from the river in great hordes. The swallows were flying to eat them, and the trout were rising. The hatches since then have been much more sporadic. They don't hatch in the same numbers as before. There are a few, and then a few more, and then a few more. I've heard similar stories from other fly anglers. I regularly pick up rocks in the stream and look at the larval stages of the aquatic insects. What concerns me the most is these rocks have about half the aquatic insects that they had 10 years ago. I'm talking about mayflies and caddisflies, which are indicator species of the quality of the river. This really concerns me. 80 to 90% of what trout eat are insects in the larval stage. Having fished in Southeast for 27 years, I've seen steady economic growth in this region because of the outdoor activities available, including fly fishing, biking, kayaking, canoeing, inner tubing, camping, and hunting. The increased number of campsites really reflects the increase in visitors. Most of these campgrounds are family-owned. These visitors are keeping owner-operated stores, restaurants, and shops, like my brother's fly shop, going, employing local people. Outdoor recreation is a growing segment of our gross domestic product, contributing $450 billion nationally in 2021. Trout fishing in southeast Minnesota contributes more than $1 billion annually to the state economy. This economic growth is dependent on clean streams and clean drinking water. Senate File 3083 strengthens monitoring and accountability, ensuring action to prevent contamination and protect our waters for future generations. I'd also like to acknowledge Jeff Broberg, who was a friend of mine, who taught me about the geology of the driftless region and how porous it is with little ground soil. The connection that anything put on the land ends up in the water. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Hainer. Now, Dr. Georgiev, I'm so sorry. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Hi. Thank you, Chairman Putnam and members of the committee. I'm Dr. Dawn Georgiev. I'm a recently retired kidney specialist and faculty member in the Department of Medicine at the University of Minnesota. I'm here to express concern about the known and potential harmful effects of neonicotinoids on human health. Neonics are insecticides that bind selectively to the nicotine acetylcholine receptors, which are in the brains of insects, causing them to basically stimulate and then eventually die. Initially, it was thought that this selectivity to insects prevented any toxicity to mammals, including humans. However, many studies, and I've outlined a lot of these on the written information that I've submitted, showed that neonic toxicity to non-human mammals. Of most concern are multiple studies that expose pregnant rats to neonics and study the effect on the brain and the nervous system of the pups. These studies have shown detrimental effects on the brain and the nerve function of the pups, and when the rat pup brains were examined, concerningly, various parts that are pretty important for learning and memory of their brains are underdeveloped. What information is available in humans so far? Since we can't feed pregnant women toxins and measure what happens to their babies, we need to look at population studies to give us a clue about the toxicity. There are several studies looking at birth outcomes of pregnant women exposed to neonics during their pregnancy. Studies found that the risk of tetralogy of Fallot, which is a fairly common cardiac birth defect, and the risk of anencephaly, which is being born without a brain, are 2 to 3 times higher in pregnant women who resided next to areas where their agricultural use of neonics was used. In another study in pregnant women, a significant association was found between low birth weight and exposure to a neonic. This is concerning because there's a lot of literature showing that low birth rate in the baby is associated with chronic effects in the adults: hypertension, obesity, diabetes, stroke, cardiac disease, big things. Another study found that the risk of autism spectrum disorder was 2 times higher in the babies of the women whose pets used the neonic-containing flea and tick collars. In conclusion, there is good evidence that the toxicity of neonics is not only to insects, but to mammals as well. And this is in the lab studies. There's growing epidemiologic studies that show that there is associations of neonics with human toxicity. In effect, we're basically doing this experiment here in Minnesota to see what is happening to exposure to neonics on our lands, particularly in rural areas where they're finding neonics. A recent study showed in actually the groundwater and well water and spring water, i.e. the source of drinking water, especially in the southeast and central Minnesota. It is for this reason that we should support passage of the neonic restriction as proposed in Senate File 3083.
Thank you, Dr. Gurdjieff. Now we have Ms. Brokaw and Ms. Winsberger. I didn't even see you here. It's good to see you again. Come on down. Ms. Brokaw, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Putnam and committee members. My name is Julia, and I have a PhD from the University of Minnesota in entomology, where I studied pollinator ecology, and I'm here representing the Xerxes Society for Invertebrate Conservation to offer support for SF 3083. Does anyone want to shout out your favorite summer vegetable real quick? Tomatoes. Tomatoes? I hear tomatoes. Great. Some of my favorites are strawberries, pumpkins, apples. I'm surprised nobody here said soybeans. That's a big one in Minnesota. My mouth is already watering. All of these crops require insect pollinators, soybeans a little bit less, but bees are often found visiting those flowers and inside those fields. These pollinators provide an estimated $3.07 billion in crop benefits annually in the US alone. For Minnesota farmers to feed the world, we need pollinators. Unfortunately, as we've heard, pollinators are in trouble due to the widespread overuse of neonicotinoid-treated crop seeds. This is substantiated by a large body of scientific, independent, peer-reviewed research. Imagine having no choice but to feed your children, your grandchildren, your beloved pets, food and water contaminated with neurotoxins that paralyze them, that ruin their memory and cognition and their futures. Caterpillars, bees, butterflies, and other insects we depend on endure this harm and suffering every day that we don't take action. The Xerxes Society supports SF 3083 because it reduces the use of treated seeds by ensuring they're only used when a need is present. Thank you for your time and consideration of this important bill.
Thank you, Ms. Brokaw. Ms. Winsberger, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jane Winsberger, and I think I'm here all the time.
More often than some of the members, frankly,
yeah.
which is...
Yeah, I'm a farmer from Mora in Kennebec County, and I'm also the vice chair of the Minnesota African Immigrant Farmers Association and a farmer member of Midwest Farmers of Color Collective. I recently purchased 30 acres of land last month in March, and I moved from Ogilvie, where I've been farming since 2021. I follow organic practice on my farm. And like most specialty crop growers, I know and I want the food I grow to be healthy and safe for my customers or for the people who will consume them. But even though I don't use those pesticides like neonics on my farm, I am still at high risk of getting exposed because of the neonic treatment seeds, which drift through the air and wash into nearby waterways and farms like mine. I worry about how these chemicals might harm my health, my family, and my community. Who knows that I practice organic? Farmers in my collective have been exposed to neonics and are now worried about losing their organic certification overexposed to these toxins. Like most farmers, I'm also concerned about the fast decline of bee, like Sister said, colonies and other pollinators in the ecosystem. As organic farmers, we rely on these pollinators to help us grow most of our crops. That is why I support this bill. This bill could require farmers to show a real need before using neonic treated seeds on their fields, which can help us have clean water and safe environment for pollinators and everyone else who is going to consume the food, the vegetables and food we grow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Winsberg. Our next testifier is virtual again. Ms. Runholt, if you would please unmute your... Oh, and Mr. Helgen, if you'd come up as well, please. But we'll start with the virtual testimony from Ms. Runholt. If you could, please, Ms. Runholt, unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, state your full name for the record, and commence your testimony when you're ready.
You guys hear me and see me?
Sound great.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Chair Putnam. Thank you for having time to hear my testimony. I am Ashley Runholt, the agronomy sales manager at Cottonwood Co-op Oil Company, MCPR board member, and then I'm also a mother of two and a wife of a fourth generation farmer. Before I get started, I want to apologize for my informal apparel. We're full bore down here in Southwest Minnesota for planting, so I apologize that I couldn't make it up there in person also. I'm an analogy person, so I'm going to use kind of an analogy to start off of why we're in opposition of this bill. So we do seed treatment on conventional acres for soybeans, similar to why we give babies vitamin K shots and DTaP vaccines. So we recommend those shots to babies, and so that way we know that those babies are going to be the healthiest version of themselves as they mature and age later in life. So just like that, for our soybean and corn plants and sugar beets, we're going to recommend those seed gets treated so that way we can ensure the viability of that seed and the longevity of that seed. Neonics are widely studied within the United States, and they're also regulated by FIFRA, similar to how vitamin K shots are studied and regulated under the EPA, along with the DTaP vaccine. The information is also readily available and widely educated through us as salespeople, and then also through the growers. As mentioned before, it's really important that our farmers understand the concerns and know the dangers of neonicotinoids because we do rely on pollinators to help pollinate our crops. For the formal verification of need in this bill, it would be very difficult to do that. I testified a few years ago on that. It'd be similar to requiring doctors to have verification of need prior to giving those same vitamin K shots and DTaP vaccines. So in order for us to do verification of need, I'm not saying it wouldn't be impossible, but it would be difficult. So on a wide scale level, we would have to certify, we're a pretty relatively small single location co-op. We would need to verify about 40,000 acres for corn and about 40,000 acres for soybeans. Soybeans are slightly different where we don't treat every bean for a variety of reasons. Soybeans are corn itself comes pre-treated from the manufacturer. Inside this bill, it also states that we would need to put on a tag for kind of like a bee friendly warning type thing. That would equate to 3.5 million bags of corn that ag retail and seed dealers would have to place, and about 7 million for soybeans that we'd have to place on each individual bag. And we are experiencing, just like every other industry, extremely short staffs. So it would be very difficult to go through each individual bag to do that. At the end of the day, I agree that I want to make sure what we're doing and what we're recommending to growers is safe, sound, and economically the right thing to do. My kids go in the field, I go in the field. Just last year when we were rock picking, numerous bumblebees were around us and landed on us. The kids got a real big kick out of it. So I understand the importance of it, and I do also agree with the importance of making sure what we're doing at a large scale is not harming the environment also. I will like to point out a couple of things, and this is more of a question if the other testifiers could answer it or not. One of the testifiers talked about a study that there was with pregnant women, and they were exposed to neonicotinoids and they had neurological issues. So the infant wasn't born without a brain. The question that I would have is, in that same study, did they ask if there was any exposure to organophosphates? I'm assuming that if there was exposure to organophosphates, that would most likely be the reason for that defectiveness. The reason of why I'm almost positive of that is because organophosphates is linked to neurological issues. And the other question that I've got also would be, do we have any data that supports and correlates the bee and aquatic issues that the other testifiers have talked about with specific insecticides and not other things that we've talked about? So like PFAS, the microplastics, what we discussed in the first bill. Like, is there something other than insecticides indefinitely that are causing this issue? In closing, I would like to say that, again, we're trying our best in rural Minnesota to make sure that everything that we do is not polluting our ground or our soil or our water. We live here, we work here, we eat here, we have our kids play in the fields, we drink out of a well that's nearby. The last thing that I want to do is feel responsible for giving my family cancer down the line. So we do 100% abide by labels and ensure that we're doing things as properly as we can.
Thank you, Ms. Runholt. Mr. Helgen, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
I'm Lee Helgen, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Crop Production Retailers, for the statewide network of co-ops that would be most involved with selling the treated seeds. In regards to your earlier advice that we keep it short, I'll try to be very brief. The treated seeds are very well regulated. The co-ops are working very closely with the farmers to make sure that the seeds are planted as they need to be, and we follow the label instructions. And we think some of the mechanics of the bill are extremely prohibitive in terms of trying to identify and verify need. Our agronomists are working with the growers to study the soil, figure out what's there, because there isn't really a good way to, once you have a problem in the ground, if there's an insect or pest or fungicide, there's not really a good way to treat that post-emergence. And so using the treated seed on the way in is really the precise, more precision agriculture way to deal with that. And so we would appreciate the Senator's support and the committee's support for production agriculture in Minnesota.
Thank you, Mr. Helgen. Members, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Senator McEwen, would you like to make any closing statement?
Thank you very much for taking the time to hear from testifiers. It seems to me that a lot of our peer nations around the world are way ahead of us on a lot of this, so it would be great to see some action. Thank you.
All right, folks, that's it for the day. That's also it for the session. This is our last time together. We're obviously moving to the floor and other things we need to do. Thanks very much for your attention and your dedication and your conviction throughout the session, your time here, and thanks for the meet today, which is also nice. That all being said, this session of the Minnesota Senate Committee on Agriculture, Veteran Broadband, and Rural Development is now adjourned.